And now on Radio Flange Goblet, it's Bedica Minge and her troupe of Lithuanian pony fanciers and their new chat show, Bring Me the Head of Eric Stoltz, which tonight features some strong cheeses and... Oh, wait, sorry, I'm being handed a note. Oh, shit. Oh, sorry about that, listeners. Yes, unfortunately, I have some very bad news. Apparently, one of the pony fanciers has sadly swelled to death at an all-you-can-drink fruit punch and zebra urine charity event to help raise money for deaf owls. So, sadly, we can't broadcast their program. That's a damn shame. It really is a damn fucking shame. Sorry, I just love that show. That show with all the ponies. Instead, I'm being told we're getting the after-movie diner, which really adds insult to injury. This festering boil of a never-ending film program is enough to make me vomit. Whenever the show is on, I go out onto the street behind the studio and I kill a child in a hedge. Okay, so maybe that's too much information. Anyway, here's the show of which the Insomniacs Gazette once said...
Good morning, would you believe, and welcome to the after movie. Well, the day after.
Welcome to the morning after movie night.
The morning after
movie
night.
We watched the movies last night.
The morning after the night before. I don't know. Anyway.
The morning after movie diner is simple. It's fine.
I've not had any sleep. This is going to go well. This is our very, very first recording in the Bronx.
Yes. In your local
diner. In my local diner, Louis, on 231st Street, which I've had previously. Their French dip roll and been very impressed. So one is hoping the impression lasts through breakfast, but I don't know.
We shall see. They did accommodate my strawberry milkshake request, which, if we were in London, they would have told me to sling my hook because it wasn't on the menu.
Right.
But because it's America, they will give you what you ask for.
She gave you a little look, but no, it's fine.
I didn't get the look.
No?
I didn't get the look.
I saw the look.
No, really?
I saw the look. I mean, it was fine. It was a look of typical someone ordering something not on the menu more than my job for it. I didn't get a little look, but that's absolutely fine. I don't mind the look. I quite appreciate the look because it means that she's human.
Yeah, and you can sympathise with
she's just like, oh, what a tit. Can't he just order what I've written down?
I should point out that your host, John Cross of the Morning After Movie Diner, is a smidge grumpy this morning. Just a smidge grumpy. And that's fine, but that's definitely happening, just so you know.
Okay. So the trouble is, of course, I don't remember what producer ties these movies together. I don't even know if I can remember.
Well, his name is Richard something. All we know is so I came up last night.
Yeah, you fill it in.
So, yeah, I came up last night and we went to possibly the last DVD store in New York.
Yes.
Possibly.
In the world, maybe.
And we ran to, like, the only people that you found in this DVD store, because when we set out, it was... a thunderstorm.
Torrential
downpour, and nobody was heading out. Least of all to the DVD store.
Yeah.
So we were.
Most people were heading out to like survival shelters. That was mostly where people were running to.
Right. Not to quick. We must get to the DVD store
before it closes at 8 o'clock.
And we were kind of toying around with a few things. And
we got really wet. I mean, we got really wet.
Yeah, we did get really wet. But having toyed around with a few things, then all of a sudden emerging. Was a 4 DVD pack of British horror films.
That's what it said on the front. It was
British horror. And it was like all linked by this producer that neither of us had ever heard of. We'd never heard of any of these movies.
No, and in fact, actually, it's fairly inconsequential who the producer was because
he just happened to be around.
The director changed. I mean, there were certain themes and certain sort of things that did tie the two movies we watched together.
That's true, but like the it's not like it wasn't like a Roger Corman. I don't think you'd like see this guy's name over the top and go. No, we must go.
He had a career that spanned about 20 years. The last movie,
but like the two movies were like only a year apart.
They were. That's what I mean.
And they were very different. Like in terms of the production values and how they looked, and like even the ambition of them to some extent.
Right, because the directors were different. The writers were different and everything.
Right, but Roger Corman, you'd expect year to year, like the production values, the talent involvement, to be of a similar level.
Yeah, well, obviously Corman also, as well as like nurturing the stable, also directed a lot himself.
Right.
So, but you know, so these were both from 1973, I think.
No, one was 70. The first one we watched was 73, and the second one was 72.
Okay.
Because for some reason
Same for your food, right?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Because I always really like reading the Roman numerals at the beginning to try and figure out what they are. I don't know why.
Okay, no, it's fine. So yeah, 72, 73, both sort of featured, one starred and one featured
Robin
Askwith, who is most known in England for his series of bawdy sex roms.
And given we have now seen him in a starring role, shouldn't be known for
Who
anything.
does not have potatoes?
Oh, me, that's me.
Would you like some fruit or tomatoes?
No, that's
no
fine.
fruit.
No fruit for me.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yes, he's known. Yes, having
He shouldn't be
seen
known for anything.
having
because he's
seen him in
awful.
the starring role of Horror Hospital, which was also known as The Computer Killers, for reasons known
Although
only
frankly,
to
it could have been called anything, because nothing about the movie made any sense.
No.
So what is it called? The House That Ate Your Mother,
Yeah.
or something.
So
And you go,
I
well,
think it might have
been.
actually been the house. That
For all the plot they left out, it might well have
For
been
all
the
the
House
plot
That Ate
there
Your
was.
Mother.
But no, so they both featured Robin Askwith, and also a character actor from Britain who was best known for like Kind Hearts and Coronets and some other Ealing stuff. Was he Dennis Price? Dennis Pride? What was his name? Okay, Dennis Price, who I'd never, quite frankly, heard of, and will probably never hear from again. But he was in both movies, so it might have been possible that in the early 70s, this producer knew a sort of staple of actors kind of thing, maybe, because these guys.
Yeah, they were both in
crop
it, weren't they?
Yeah. Dennis Price in not a particularly leading role in either one, and Askwith considerably less in the first one than in the second.
As far as I could tell, and I could be wrong here, but it might even have been the same room. Like it might be that for the whole 2 years, Dennis Price just lived in one room, and everybody would go, "If you want to film, come into the room." Because he was only in one scene, in one room. He did leave and go to the house.
The producer was like, "I can get Dennis Price." People were like, "How can you get Dennis Price?"
How can you get Dennis Price?
And he's like,
The Dennis Price.
I know the room. No, actually, it was different rooms, but you're right. It might have been the same. They were both shot in Shepperton Studios in Surrey, and I think the house in the first one in Horror Hospital was either I think it possibly was what became the Rocky Horror House, but what used to be the Hammer Horror House. I think
okay.
I think it's the same thing, which is now a hotel.
Right. So should we just talk about Horror Hospital?
We started off with Horror Hospital, we finished up with Tower of Evil, both of which have multiple names. Tower of Evil is also known as the Horror of Snape Island.
Yeah.
And Horror Hospital, which is known as the Computer Killers, again for reasons known only to distributors, I guess. It also depends whether you're in Canada, America or England as to what title they go under, which is very, very confusing. Also, IMDb seems to have them listed under the Canadian title, which again is just frankly bizarre. So, Horror Hospital, I don't even know where to begin. I really don't know where to begin.
Well, okay, we begin.
Well, first of all,
We begin with that thing that British horror films had an obsession with in the 70s, as far as I can tell, that when the kids, when bands played, they played in other people's living rooms. And people drived around.
It started off with what appeared to be a drag act punk band.
And that was the only music for the first half hour, because I didn't even notice, but you were right. The thing is, it was a very... So, alright, I guess we should try and sum up the plot.
No, I'm
you sum up the plot, You're much better than me.
As far as we can figure it,
Oh, God, yeah.
there's a guy, a supposedly in a wheelchair, crippled doctor, who used to work for Stalin,
Yeah.
right? Then set up his own... he used to work for Pavlov.
Well, should we explain the plot of the movie, or...?
No, I'm going to explain the whole thing.
Okay, right.
Used to work for Pavlov.
Right.
Then worked for Stalin.
Yes.
Then got fed up because Stalin brought in a lot of young Turks who just wandered around
Yeah.
the laboratory getting in his way. So instead of dealing with that, he set up his own laboratory, started to work with mice on what? We don't know.
Yeah.
When I must have humans, got humans.
Everything's good, gentlemen.
Oh,
Very
great,
good.
thank you,
Don't
man.
check right up, okay?
Thanks very much, man. Thank you.
decided to work with humans. What he was doing with humans was basically lobotomizing them, but also doing something which allowed him to control them like zombies, like the original form of like zombies, but without voodoo. This time he put something in their heads that he was able to use buttons on a computer to control, right?
Thank you very much. Lovely. Magic. Yeah, although, all right. First of all, there's a number of problems. Just very quickly to jump in, just so you're aware of why this is so bargain. At no point do you see him like putting any computer things in their heads. You just see him cut into them, and then like a few scenes later, you see somebody pressing a button and like they do a backflip. At no point does he say do a backflip.
No.
Right? He doesn't actually say that, does he?
No.
The bird just like pushes a button. There's, like,
And they do a backflip.
there's a limited number of buttons here, right? There's like maybe 36 buttons, and I might add 8 people. Right, so already you're cutting a number of buttons down, and one of those buttons is specifically do a backflip. Another button, by the way, is do a backflip twice.
Right.
So
all we could figure it, because he never quite explained what was going on. Oh no, wait a minute, there was something about him making humans make love.
it seemed to be. I would suggest, had they been able to get more women for the film,
Right.
I think the plot would have made more sense, because ultimately it seemed to be he was training them so that they would do. I think the implication was, as far as I can tell, right? Actually, now that I think of it, I think the implication was the reason there were more blokes than birds was that the women he trained to have his way with them,
Right.
because
And the blokes he trained to do backflips.
and the blokes he trained to be like guards or whatever. But you have to figure that out, because as far as you can tell when the movie happens, when he does his like, before I kill you, I'm going to demonstrate my entire evil plan. His entire evil plan involves pressing a button and making somebody do a backflip. And he looks at them like, am I the shit or am I the shit? Look at this business.
So
We're going to do a backflip at my command.
So, he, a wandering stranger or something comes into his laboratory, sees all this scary stuff going on, burns it down. The doctor is crippled.
By the way, sorry, just very quickly. Everything he's talking about happens before the movie begins, as it were, in the timeline.
This all takes place in flashback. I'm going to explain that in a bit. I'm just going through it in terms of trying to figure it out.
As if it was real, how the timeline would work.
Right.
Yeah.
He escapes to Finland,
Maybe.
where he meets a woman who used to run a whorehouse in Hamburg, and they set up a new laboratory in England. None of this is explained. Where they start doing the same thing, creating people to have backflips and whatever. All goes perfectly all right. They have it set up so that the guy at the local train station, which seemingly only goes to this stately home, and that's it. He knows all about it, so he's perfectly all right, happy sending young hippies to their death. And there is a guy in London who runs a thing called Hairy Holidays. I've not made that up. Who advertises in one magazine, which she says must get very low circulation because they never get any people there. He sits literally in a room with a half a bottle of mouldy milk,
Behind him.
being incredibly sleazy in camp, and when someone shows up, he offers them the Bahamas or a big stately home in the country where he can recuperate as a
Which, by the way, when we come into the movie, which is basically where we come in, Robin Askwith, the titan of British acting,
who looks like
who has a face like a barber's shop floor. That's what he looks like.
He looks like the the drummer that Badfinger let go. Is what he looks like.
because he's a bit weird and creepy.
He is
We
very
can't have
weird.
him in the band. He's putting the birds off. He turns up now, as Grossi pointed out, because I missed it. He turns up as this Hairy Holidays travel agent,
Which is down a back alley.
Which is down a back alley, and sleazy camp bloke sleazes onto him, and so
Even looks at his knob.
even looks
through
at his knob, which was weird, like a
trousers.
close-up of his knob through his trousers. And then he goes, "Oh, do you want to go to the country?" And Ask goes, "Yeah, that sounds nice." And then he just hands over the ticket to him, and that's the end of the trip. No money, no nothing. Just if you turn up, they'll give you a ticket to go to this like quite expensive, as far as he's concerned, anyway, health hospital.
Right.
It was very strange.
So Askwith meets Bird on train.
Right.
has the really random early 70s line of, don't worry, love, I'm not going to rape
It's
you.
all right, I'm not going to rape you. Takes her food without saying thank you, which I thought was pretty, I don't know. That was the thing that I hated most about him, was that she was like very kind enough to offer him her
apple.
despite only just having
Well, no,
met
because
him.
she was eating a sandwich and he was like, at least you bloody got lunch, brr.
And then she gives him an apple. He grabs the apple, doesn't say thank you, and then says, don't worry, I'm not going to rape you.
Right.
So
But
at that point, we hated Askwith.
Right. Oh yeah, there was no character establishment at all.
Also-
The woman wistfully looked out of the window and gave us whole gobs of exposition about characters we hadn't met yet, about scenarios we had no idea what they were
Yeah,
about.
long rambling stories
About Hamburg and prostitutes and whatever. Because she is scary old woman's niece,
Right.
and because she was born out of wedlock, she couldn't execute her mother's will, so she needed her mother's sister or something.
Which was completely unnecessary. She's my last living relative, I'm going to visit her. That's fine. You don't need any more than that. I don't know why
Right.
they felt the need to add in all the rest of it. There was
No.
absolutely no need.
Or why we needed the aunt's backstory while looking wistfully out over fields of England.
Because the whole point is, right, is that such is the power of Askwith's intellect and strength that he is
That
the
by
one.
the time
He
they-
is the one that brings this whole enterprise crashing down. There's been God knows how many people have wandered into this trap and have been apparently unable to get out of it.
Well, if he's
Where
been doing-
Askwith,
if
who can't do anything or think, seemingly,
Right.
is able to bamboozle and baffle this great scientific mind,
Yeah.
and bring him finally crashing down.
So, the one thing we've left out is that helping run this bizarre health fund is a crazy little dwarf who looks, as I described, like someone miniaturized David Hemming. Why there's a dwarf, I don't know. And also the security of this fortress of madness is a series of guys in biker leathers and bike helmets. By the way, they never ever take these off.
No.
Ever. And
I know they did once for the hilarious joke towards the end.
one of them did.
Yeah.
By the way, there were only 2 credited cast members playing the biker
because-
people,
no, that was the
because
point.
at any point there was only 2 biker people on the screen at
Because
any
there was a
one
bit
time.
towards the end where they were getting attacked by biker people kept turning up, in the standard, one at a time kind of thing. And you go, you know what? I don't think there's only ever 2 of them on screen at one time. I think they've only got 2 biker people showing up. End credits. Oh yeah, there we go. There's just 2 of them. That's it.
But we're saying, right, what we're trying to explain is they never take their helmets off.
No.
There is a bit where they sit down at this creepy dinner and one of the people that he still has yet to lobotomize is sat there, and she quite understandably has a screaming fit.
Start screaming.
Right. And in ran 2 guys still in full biker leathers and biker helmets and dragged her out, and I'm like, really? Really?
Yeah.
I mean, apart from the weight on your neck of wearing one of those things perpetually, imagine the heat of having to run, because these are the guys, right? Their only job is to run around, grab, fetch, lift. They do all the exerting.
There must be a computer somewhere with a lot of buttons.
Yeah, that's
Drag the screening women away. Press that button.
no one.
Chase after him. No, not that way.
Yes.
No, that way.
No one ever did a backflip while wearing a helmet. What I'm trying to do by telling it this way round is to illustrate that nothing that happened made any sense at all.
And there was a point in the movie where, you've got to understand, when you're watching it, it's deep. The pace is all weird.
Well, it's
whole
an
thing
early-
seems to be,
it's an early
but they seem to be
70s.
skating by on the whole idea of, if the more peculiar we are, the
Right.
weirder we are, that'll be creepy. But it's not creepy because it's always lots of light and sunshine.
Well, because
and greenery.
it's directed by someone who has, if this was directed by let's say an incredible ham of a director where he had Dutch angles and weird wide angle lenses, and if this was directed by Gilliam on speed, then you could have made the dwarf really spooky, and you could have made the house really creepy.
And you've got
could have-
someone to write a better backstory. Because what happens, it gets to a point where you're going, but why is this happening?
None of it's explained.
You get an hour into the movie,
What's even better?
Yeah, but you don't even know what. Like, it's not like a thing of like, okay, I know what's going on, and sooner or later there's going to be some, backstory explanation. Like, I don't know why they're here. I don't know why they haven't run away. What are the bloke with the biker helmets about? Why is the guy in the wheelchair like just occasionally showing them around, giving them like half-assed explanations as for, look at how powerful I am. Look, I'm going to ask her to take one step forward. Take one step forward. See how powerful am I? That's not. That could be hypnosis. I mean, you just get a bit frustrated with it because you're thinking, well, sooner or later, right? Sooner or later, the weird things are going to start happening. It's going to pick up the pace because the cover of the movie, how they sold it, it was all, it's going to be weird. It's going to be peculiar. It's going to be, like the biggest nightmare you've ever seen. Well, it was weird, and it was peculiar, but it was like the biggest nightmare you've ever seen. Even the trailer was like, we don't show you more than this one scene. Which,
well,
by
the
way,
trailer was ridiculous.
Yeah, because the one scene they showed gave away the whole twist ending.
Right. Yeah, I couldn't actually believe that. It was like, we can only show you this one scene, and it's going to give away the twist. That's completely bizarre.
To be fair, if I had seen that, given what was in the shot, I would think, wow, that looks like a deeply strange movie.
Right.
I might be interested, but
I doubt it though.
But the more we watched it, the more we got frustrated with that it was slow.
Well, because what happened?
Askwith was really bad.
So Askwith and the girl show up at this health farm, meet the dwarf, and this is where it gets like the dwarf at the beginning of the movie puts 2 heads in the water tank. Right, 2 severed heads in the water tank. Well, we haven't even mentioned that. They have a Rolls Royce.
Yeah, this is their big set piece thing.
Yeah, they have a Rolls Royce.
This will make it stand out.
That when you press a button, so a big blade shoots out the top of the car and decapitates anyone who's running along by the side of it, dumping their head into a conveniently placed
bloody sack
basketball hoop,
which isn't there
sack.
when the car's driving along. Like that sack, I know the blades are there because they press about the blade.
Yeah, no, the sack must pop out where the blade pops out.
I guess so, yeah, alright.
So, yeah, they show up, the midget puts 2 bloody heads in the water tank, reasons unknown. Then all of a sudden, the midget's doing all this crazy stuff. Then halfway through the film, the midget goes, no, actually, I'm as much of a prisoner as you are. And everyone's like, really?
Everybody grows tired of the whole arrangement at the same time.
At exactly the same weekend, everyone decides, first of all...
It's almost as if they're tuned in with the audience.
Yeah.
Everybody goes,
the doctor decides that instead of just, tying them down, injecting them, and lobotomizing them, which is what he's done with everybody else.
Presumably, yeah.
He's going to wheel around in his chair looking like a big bat-faced fool, because it's Michael Gough with the most bat ears you've ever seen in your entire life. Wearing a ridiculous, gothically black... I mean, it could have been I've just wheeled off a Hammer horror set, by the way, and look at my velveteen jacket. That's exactly what's going on in this film. Everyone has ridiculous pale makeup on that's so very clearly pale makeup, it's ludicrous. He's wheeling around in this wheelchair going, well, I'm going to explain everything that's going on without actually explaining anything at all.
He's obsessed with explaining what's going on.
And then at one point...
he's almost addicted to explaining.
Yeah.
But at the same time, he's smart enough to know they don't need to know everything.
Well, but he doesn't tell us
I'm not your average run-of-the-mill.
He basically tells us what would be the first couple of lines of his Wikipedia entry if this mad doctor had a Wikipedia entry, which is, I used to work for Pavlov, I used to work for Stalin, my thing burned down.
And none of it led up to anything. There was no,
Oh, but then, the guy goes, you don't know the whole story. Then there was more explanation that meant nothing. That had nothing to do with anything, that was really just to pad out the film. Then, when the dwarf dies at the end, he goes, but you don't know everything. The doctor is... And then he dies. I'm like, the doctor is what? And then the twist of the movie made no...
Well, no, if they bothered to... first of all, they ended it really quickly, and it didn't... Look, it would have made sense if he was I can see how when they came up with the idea that there's this guy in a wheelchair, right? He's a mad doctor, and he entices young people down to his stately home, where instead of treating them, he turns them into zombies that will do his will. And the reason he's doing that is because actually he's not really a doctor. He is in fact a hideous monster. Wearing a doctor face, a doctor mask, and he needs these zombies in order to, like, basically, for Nookie, like, that's what he needs the zombies for. But he needs the male zombies to protect him, and he needs the female zombies for Nookie. But none of that's explained. Like, it really isn't. It's like the way they give out information is so bad. Like, some of it you have to. They give you way too much.
But the
about,
only reason
like, the background of the aunt, but there's no real feeling of that she's changed. The reason she's getting tired of it is because of her niece. Like, that's not really mentioned. You have to guess that. The doctor
Also,
deciding to, like, kill everybody and ruin his own operation.
that didn't make any sense either. Basically, the moment...
Because all he does is, the fat bloke, all he does is turn up to go, you haven't paid me yet, can I get paid please? They go, oh, you want to get paid, do you? Pay the man, wink. Do you know what I mean? Oh, by the way, when the aunt decides to leave, the aunt goes, I mean, this doesn't actually happen yet, but the aunt goes, yes, I've decided I've had enough. Could you please send a car? You mean the car that so far has only been used to dispatch people trying to get away? Send me the murdering, people getting away car, please. I want to get away.
Yeah.
You mean you want to be murdered? That's what you want.
Right.
So there's like the whole thing was lots of information about stuff you didn't need to know, and no information about stuff you
Basically,
did.
the
all the
ultimate
while
idea
you're
was...
being made to look at Askwith's face, and
Right.
for that, I don't think I can forgive it.
No. Because Askwith looks like a shaved baboon. But they just haven't shaved all of them.
would have done better than Askwith in this movie.
Askwith was pretty terrible. But basically, two young kids go to big stately home and get embroiled in madness that is not really explained. Movie ends.
Yeah, pretty much. So we were not.
And halfway through the movie, as if Askwith wasn't enough with his ridiculous hair and just repetitively ridiculous gurney face, along comes the Rim Ram King of the Flim Flam Rum or whatever.
Yeah, the guy at the Kids in the Hall sketch.
Hey man, this is the best looking man in the world. Wrap up in a brim bram broom and clim clam clean up the rim ram room. Cause your bim bam baby's coming home tonight. Get my slim slam slippers and my easy chair on your flim flam fingers through my greasy hair and kiss me baby, let me hold you tight. I've been north and south and east and west, but even a honeybee needs some rest. When I get my jacket and my trousers pressed, I'm gonna fall the swallow right back to the nest. Don't you worry, my train is late. Gonna shim sham shuttle on a flim fram freight, cause your bim bam baby's shaking home tonight. Slam slam, a bim bam, blam blam, a rim ram.
Don't really need to explain, but yeah, I know what you mean.
Well, no, but I mean for people because
Basically, he was the 70s big head. Like he looked like what one could imagine a sort of shampoo model in 1973 with him.
and he was supposed to be like. This is another thing, like where they obviously didn't have any or that much. Like the director and the writer obviously didn't have that much experience in making these kind of movies. So like, oh, let's just find some comic relief now. And it wasn't. I mean, it wasn't funny, but it was. They thought he was comic relief because he was doing like. First of all, they gave him like.
Well, yeah, we should explain the music. The music was by DeWolf, which is a complete misnomer because what they mean is we got this out of the DeWolf Library, which is a famous library, and like Dawn of the Dead, part of Dawn of the Dead is scored from the DeWolf Library. Holy Grail is scored by the DeWolf Library. Quite a few big films have been scored by the DeWolf Library. When they need like big bombastic orchestral stuff and they can't afford it, basically. But what had happened was the director had gone into the DeWolf Library and was probably sat in the edit suite and was like, you know, this scene of Mr. Hairdo in his denim jacket strutting down this thing needs something. Like, we need to pep it up a bit. What has the DeWolf Library got to offer? And he found like this type music and put it over him like skipping through some leaves
Towards the house. Who's this guy? And by the way, he totally goes, I'm looking for my girl, who's like the last one that gets, zombie or whatever. And
who gets lobotomized.
And the number of times that they're in a room and they need to get away, they go, well, I don't know, but let's get out of it. He goes, yeah, all right. And then, no, I need to find out where the girl is. I need to find out what happened to her. I need to, get her. But he just gives up on his quest in
Well, no, he
favour of-
says Mimi a lot. He says
Well,
Mimi
I
a
guess.
lot.
But no, but he doesn't actually go looking for it.
No. He hitches his wagon to...
He looks at Askwith and goes, this is the man that gets us out of trouble. This is the brain that's going to bring us crashing to the ground.
Also,
tell me what to do. Oh,
Also,
Askwith.
they keep knocking out Askwith, drugging Askwith, putting Askwith to sleep.
All of this space, from what I can tell, an afternoon.
Right.
During which-
At no point do they just kill Askwith.
Yeah, or
he
just
kills
start
the guy
operating.
who he's been working with for 30 years.
Well, he needs Askwith because
apropos
apparently...
of nothing.
Yeah, but he doesn't need it. He's so not short of biker men. Not only has he got lots and lots of biker men,
Plus Askwith
he's also
is
got
not
like a
good.
gymnasium full of like fat blokes.
He's not
He
good
goes,
at
look at my... I mean, he likes women, right? The crazy doctor. And I understand, like, if you're a mad doctor and you've managed to create...
And
this,
you're wearing
like,
a mad doctor's
you
face.
would want to show them off. But I think he'd be a bit embarrassed going, look at what I've created. And it's a gymnasium full of fat, ugly blokes. Do you know? Going... And he goes, look, I can make them do backflips. He's going, this is just sad. This is low-rent scientific madness. I'm telling you
It
right
really
now.
is. No big scheme to like take over
Yeah, no
London,
big scheme, no attractive ladies. What are you even doing here?
Yeah,
You know?
yeah.
So I felt bad for him.
But the interesting thing about the movie is that although it's obviously low budget, just judging by the small size of the cast and whatever they could knock together, and although it's British and therefore hampered by that, and although it is, you know, ill-paced and ill-explained, because it's the 70s, because it's shot on film, because it's all on location, because they have got a dwarf and they have got backflipping people, and because they have got biker men, and because they have got Michael Gough wheeling himself around in a mad wheelchair, and because it does look good, and it is, you know, it doesn't suffer from what indie movies or B movies suffer from today, which is that because they're shot on video and because they have no money, they just look shit. It is.
Although I would say, I agree with you, but I would say that actually a better example of that is the second, which is the second movie, the I can't remember what it's called now.
Cinematographer.
No, the movie, the second movie.
Oh, Tower of Evil.
Tower of Evil. In Tower of Evil,
Or horror on Snape Island.
it's what is exactly like you're saying. It's shot on film, but this time, the second movie is shot on film, and it does have that like that 70s feel, and like because all the things you were saying to me while we were watching it, wow, like, you don't get dialogue like this, you know, like there was a
Well, no, that was Tower of Evil. I was saying.
that's what I'm saying, exactly. So that the saving grace that could be applied to horror Oscars, which is that at least it's shot on film, at least there's a start, a middle, and end, sort of. There are bits of it that are quite creepy, and it looks okay. Would be better applied to Tower of Evil.
Well, I would
where-
actually say more. I would say actually a lot more positive thing about Tower of Evil, which we'll get onto in a minute. But my basic thing is, if you came across Horror Hospital, this is what I'm trying to say. If you came across Horror Hospital and you were like, oh, okay, a little bit of early 70s British exploitation stuff, I'll pop it in. It wouldn't be like the very worst decision you'd made, right?
But it would be close.
No, I mean there are far worse things that you could sit and watch. I mean, it's equally bonkers.
But it's quite like I understand what you're saying. I do, and I understand that when it comes to certain modern horror movies, they are just unwatchable because it's shot cheaply. There's a lot of contempt from the people involved in it. But with that, I still think the worst thing about Horror Hospital was that it was boring.
Yeah, it had all this crazy stuff in it, but it still was boring. That's basically the bad thing about it. And this fits in with like Killer's Moon is probably the closest British horror movie that I've seen to this kind of thing, where lots of mad stuff happens and there's nudity and there's gore and all the rest of it, but it doesn't amount to a whole hell of beans.
Anybody home?
I don't like it here, Penny. It gives me the creeps.
It's the kind of place that would give anybody the creeps.
I'm scared, Penny. Let's go back.
Who in their right mind would even go to this island? Would you go there?
Evil. I get feelings of evil from this island.
Would you dare spend the night in this monument to the macabre, in the Tower of Evil?
Stop playing around, man.
Her brain has become overloaded by the horror of what it has done or seen.
Snape Island never brought anything but unhappiness, tragedy for anyone.
If the girl didn't murder those kids, who did?
Somebody else, obviously.
But who? There was nobody else on the island, was there?
Huh?
Was there?
What? What's the matter?
Can't you hear it? Listen.
That's not the wind, is it?
There's only one way into Snape Island. There's only one place to go on Snape Island. But there are infinite ways to reach the next world in the Tower of Evil.
This means we're completely cut off from the mainland. The boat's gone, now the radio's gone.
One way in and no way out. It looks as if we shall all have to spend the night in the Tower of Evil.
Tower of Evil, directed really well, great cinematography. It's all shot on a soundstage, but looks okay and looks good for that. Why don't you give us a quick rundown of the plot, Jim?
Well, the thing that was nice about Tower of Evil that I liked about it instantly was because I was like, I'm a bit worried about this because there's only 4 people and they're on a deserted island and they're obviously going to get picked off one by one. Can they pad this out for a whole movie?
Well, let's explain what Tower of Evil is then. Tower of Evil is a craggy island off the coast of England with a lighthouse on it, on which in the opening scenes we see some murders.
Well, no, what's cool about it is you come in at... What's cool is it seems like you're coming in at the end of the movie, almost. But actually it turns out to be the middle. As in you're coming in, these 2 sailors arrive at the island and they find dead bodies and then a not dead body of a girl still left.
Yeah, screaming, bloody, naked girl who stabs one of them.
It stabs one of them, and it's it's a genuinely really creepy opening scene because you don't know
the
what
whole movie is. I think the whole movie was very atmospheric and very creepy.
Because, like you say, because it's shot on a soundstage, it's one of those movies where even though it's shot on a soundstage, that means that it looks good. And they can shoot it well. They can take their time.
Smoked by a bundle. There's lighting.
Really creepy.
The lighting is really well done.
Right. But what's cool about it is then. But that's all you know. Then they take the girl back to hospital, where they're flash-coloured lights at her, and she remembers little bits of what happened,
in really interesting montages as well. That some are clearly dreams, and some are clearly what actually happened. It's really well put
but there's
together.
no go back to the island. But it's oh, here we are arriving at the island. Because there's they arrive at the island, one of them's a bit freaked out, and then it flashes forward to the murders because she's remembering in the context of having gone through it, so she can't stop but keep remembering how it all ends, which is quite cool.
And there's in this period, there's in all the flashbacks to the 4 kids who are essentially on the island, there's lots of nudity and gore and
unfortunately there is something else.
There is Askwith.
There is Askwith.
Momentary Askwith.
To be fair, it is a small amount of if your doctor had to prescribe some Askwith, this is the Askwith that you've got. It's relatively short. He's not even doing his own voice. He's too nervous to act too much.
Right.
Definitely what you want over
Tower of Evil Askwith over Horror Hospital Askwith is certainly preferable.
What's the first time you see him? He's dead. So already well, I haven't got anything to worry about there.
He will be
limited Askwith.
He will be lanced in the chest by a large gold relic. Because the other thing that's going on is that these jazz archaeologists.
So after all this happens, after the horror of Snape Island, as in the girl gets taken into the hospital and all the rest of it, then.
Yeah, the jazz archaeologists show up because there is rumoured to... because they find in one of the dead bodies a Phoenician lance Yes, the gold line.
We had to look up what Phoenician was.
Because Phoenician was like a
maritime civilization.
Maritime civilization around the time of
50 to 300 BC, I think you said?
No, it was 1550 because BC counts downwards the other way, remember? So it was 1550 BC to 300 BC. So they were around a long time, but over 3,000 years ago, basically.
Right.
And they were a maritime culture that had a lot of gold and a lot of trinkets and a lot of things.
And whenever they buried one of their great leaders, like a captain or whatever, they would do it with great ceremony and a lot of treasure and all the rest of it.
Yeah, and underneath the god of Baal, who was basically the demon of Nuki.
Like he was like a fertility god that was then kind of folded into the devil when Christianity came along. Baal was son of the devil. And Baal looks like, and we're not sure about this, but he looks almost exactly like the creatures that do the crazy dance in Labyrinth where they swap heads.
Well,
he looks exactly
like those two creatures.
So we were wondering if Labyrinth was maybe based on that, but who knows? Because they did.
Well, you were wondering. I
wondered a lot.
I don't think Jim Henson watched this and went, you know what, that's the look for me. But
no, I wonder if they're both based on what Baal actually looks like.
Right. But then the plot even thickens because the boatman who takes the jazz archaeologists to the island, he then starts to spin a pretty yarn about his brother, sister-in-law and their mad child who lived on this island for 20 years because his brother went a bit potty, right? So there's this whole thing, is it a supernatural killer? Is it his brother? Is it the son? What's going on? We have jazz archaeologists, all of whom are very horny and looking to get laid.
Yeah, that's what's really cool about it. Instead of them being like, I'm an archaeologist and I must know what's going on this island. Really? I'm another archaeologist and I must know what's going on. Instead, it turns out they're all in this like incestuous little thing where like two of them
used to be together, the other two cheated on each other.
The two couples and one husband and wife cheated on the other ones with the other. So there's four people who've all cheated on each other, and none of them want to be with any of the other ones, and one of them is just broken up with the other one, and they're all horny, frustrated, and bitter.
And lots of recrimination. And it's this wonderful kind of setup where although they're the people, we're told at the beginning by Dennis Price again, that this is the best team for the job. Right. We have to send these people respective of the fact that they all want to either kill or fuck each other, right?
And these are the people they sent to the deserted
so these
island
are the people who are going
with a probable killer on the loose. Although they don't know this because the police are convinced that the surviving
crazy girl,
because she stabbed the sailor when she was found, she's the one that killed all of them. So that's why they go.
So the police are just like, well, look, have at it, we don't care.
Yeah, we don't give a monkey.
There's this whole thing where some of the characters are meant to be American, although they never ever use an American accent. No. And the reason why I say that is because going along with the jazz archaeologists and the salty old seaman is a guy in a trench coat who claims to be, well, at first I thought he was like an attorney for the family's estate who's trying to...
he's more like a private detective, right? Or
He's more like a Pinkerton man.
Private detective. I think he's more like a Pinkerton man, something like that, you know what I mean? Like somebody they could hire to find out what happened, basically.
Yeah, because the family of the crazy girl has gone, well, we don't believe she killed anybody. We think more's afoot. We're going to send trenchcoat jazz detective,
who, despite being American, has an English accent, which may come in handy.
Yes.
When he's over in that there England.
Yes. And more secrets are revealed throughout the movie. Various people have already been to the island who we didn't know had already been to the island, and some people know more than they're letting on. And all this happens. And then there's like lots of spooky scenes.
Genuinely really creepy.
Genuinely like. The difference between this and Horror Hospital is that this is directed by someone who knows, here is a creepy set piece and I'm going to mount it much in the same way that someone like Carpenter would or Cronenberg would or someone like that down the line. Like you name your kind of 80s Craven, whatever, name your like 80s horror director who knows, okay, here's the scene where all the kids are sitting around having a laugh, but here's the scene where the person goes off into the woods. I've got to film this a certain way to heighten the tension of the audience. Likewise, in this movie, here's the scene where they're all sitting around doing part, having recriminations, hating or wanting to fuck each other, and then here's the scene where the woman goes off by herself into the shed. This has to be filmed with some kind of panache and tension, and sure enough, there it really was. Like,
and it looked great as well.
It
there
looked
were lots
great.
of like really nice. It was a really nice looking film, and even the shots where they showed like, oh yeah, you know, it's only a marvel of the lighthouse on the island.
Yeah.
It looked great and creepy, and like it was nice because there was a constant sense of isolation. There wasn't that feeling of. And like the boat gets blown up quite early, so you don't get those annoying that you get in horror films. Like, just leave, right? It's obviously weird and they want to kill you, so it's England, right? They've already let you run away. As long as you run away not like a moron, like Askwith does, you will get away.
Yeah,
or you're being chased by two guys
running down a slight incline.
I don't care how zombie they are, they're not going to get far in leather jumpsuits running for like an hour and a half in the hot sun.
Right.
Forget it, it's not going to happen.
Well, yeah, but Askwith has difficult with inclines.
Yes,
a
he
very
does.
slight
He does
incline,
not. Yeah.
and he fell over.
Yeah, throws his
instantly.
balance.
Oh, we also didn't mention that in Horror Hospital, for reasons known only to Horror Hospital, there is an acid swamp.
Oh yeah, that's right, yeah.
But if you fall in, even if you get a toe in there, you're done for.
Yeah,
that's it. You're dragged under by the quicksand or whatever it's meant to be.
Because I feel for British horror directors, there's so few ways to dispatch people, do you know what I mean? Like, naturally anyway, look at nature taking back their creation.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? When you're going to, like trying to do a hedge and was never heard from again. But on Tower of Evil, like,
how'd he go? We fell into a head.
We never saw him again. And Tower of Evil, they blow up the boat, destroy the radio, and then they are genuinely on their own, on quite a small island.
Yeah.
And some of them, like, what's nice is, some of them are really greedy because they want the treasure. Some of them want to find the treasure because it's of archaeological interest. Some don't even care about that and just want to, like, fuck somebody else.
None of them, by the way, act like archaeologists.
Yeah. They all act like they were just fired from a folk group. They're all a bit bitter and
they
horny.
all act like they were just yesterday modelling Rolex in the Hawkshead catalogue, and they've gone, well, where should we go for lunch, Marjorie? Oh, we're going to the Haunted Island. That sounds like fun. We'll take the check.
Yeah, thank you very much.
So, but the interesting thing is Tower of Evil on Horror Snape Island. Yeah, of course. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Have a beautiful day.
Oh, will do. Thank you. Yeah. Happy 4th.
Sorry. And I'll be back for your check, okay?
Yeah, no worries. Thank you. The difference between this and Horror Hospital is it's sort of, in a weird way, equally bonkers in terms of, like, you know, there's an ancient Phoenician stuff going on, there's a mad brother, there's horny people, there's an island, there's this, there's that, right? There's a bunch of, like, mad stuff going on, but in terms of, like, verisimilitude, within the story it's telling, it all makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And like that.
Okay, guys, this is for you.
Right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And the structure of it, the way that it starts off is very unnerving. And you do, like, they start right off with, this is a dangerous place and people die here, and, you know, they're not like, you know, what's nice is they don't do, like, the young people on the deserted island getting picked off gets dealt with in like 10, 15 minutes.
Yeah.
You know, there's no like mucking about, like they are just dispatched. And it is like the scene where the bloke gets dispatched in front of the girl after they've been for that swim is genuinely really creepy and weird because, again, it's told in her flashback. And so there's lots of screams and upsetting images and all the rest of it.
Yeah, none of it is told traditionally.
Like her remembering the incident was brings
very
back like,
effective.
everything. Yeah,
it
so
was
it's not
very
just like
effective.
the moment is described in like, well, this.
And it was effective for two reasons. It was very effective because it was very effective because it was scary.
Yes.
But it was also very effective because it looked like and felt like someone remembering a horrific incident.
Yeah. It was like, because it was all the lots of upsetting images, lots of screaming, all associated with that moment.
Yeah.
Because that's how she would remember.
So it was, I mean, that was some of them. There was two things that were really effective about the movie. The first thing was the flashback sequences. Were done in a really interesting but believable way. The second thing was, once we got to a more sort of standard fare, which was the jazz archaeologists, the set pieces or the creepy sequences where someone was alone, someone was clearly either sneaking up on them or they were about to find someone, they were done really well. And I would say probably the third thing was the dialogue. And the reason why I kept saying to you, oh, you just don't hear stuff like this anymore, is that people, yes, because it was an exploitation movie, and yes, because it was meant to be getting a an X rating or whatever, just to kind of sell it on the back of it being like a big, gory, sexy horror movie. But they acted and behaved like adults.
Yeah.
Yes, they were petty and frustrated, and yes, they were horny, blah, 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 blah. But meaning that, like, if a woman was asleep in bed, she wasn't all, like, covered up or wearing a ridiculously large pair of pajamas or anything like that. She just looked naturally in bed. And when they talked about sex, they talked about sex in an adult way. They didn't, like, pussyfoot around it or whatever like that. They were, you could genuinely tell who was like aggressive sexually, who was a bit more submissive, who was a bit more like there was just a
there was a nice
more adult feel.
Yeah, there was nice horror film touches to it as well. There were bits like, oh, you're not going to make me stay here alone. You go, no, of course not. Put your coat on. That was a really nice line where like the last woman alive. Like, we're going to go out and find out what's going on. She's like, you're not going to leave me here on your own. Of course not, put your coat on. Right. As opposed to, yes, you'd better stay here, I think that would be safe.
Right.
Like, they didn't learn as they went along. It was nice.
And the idea that when the women were left alone, or left alone just being guarded by this errant hippie who came with them, who was the son of the boatman, who was just painfully useless, but really just there for cannon fodder, essentially. But and to pork one of the women. When the women were left alone with him, the women had this really nice banter because the blonde one had walked in on the brunette one who was wearing like the ridiculous suede three-piece suit, which included a suede bra as well, which was quite incredible. Apparently back in the 70s, when they had an abundance of suede, they made everything out of it.
Yeah. It's nearly empty.
Okay, well,
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let's just wrap it up.
Well, no, we can talk while we walk to the thing.
Oh, that'd be fun. Yeah, all right.
Yeah. So the two women had been left alone. One of the women had had her husband cheated on by the other woman. So like there was loads of reconciliation.
Yeah, there was. It was like they were left alone, and instead of being like Jesus Christ, where's like patronising, oh the killer's coming, or let's talk about jazz. It was despite just like people would, despite the fact that we're being threatened or we feel.
I really hate
we're gonna bitch and like make little digs at each other.
Yeah, and it was indicated in the scenes and in the dialogue that she did very much seduce him. He wasn't the cheater. So yeah, Tower of Evil, much better than Horror Hospital.
Agreed. I genuinely really enjoyed it. I mean, it may well have had its standing substantially raised by the fact that we watched Horror Hospital before it.
No, I don't think so. I think
that it did what it was supposed to do and did it well was so nice.
I tell you what it was like. I found that it was definitely like when Hammer did a film really, really well, but the exploitation version of Hammer is what it felt like. Because there was more tits and there was more gore and it was more of it. Whatever. Yeah. But it felt like exploitation Hammer, but at its best. Yeah. So when Hammer was at its best and they realised that even though they had a limited budget and they were filming everything on the soundstage, they could atmosphere it up to the fucking hilt and have some decent characters and some decent scenarios and do a bunch of stuff and throw in a 3,000-year-old Phoenician god and fling a bunch of stuff around.
Like you were saying, because it happened at the tail end of Hammer.
I mean, real like tail end. It's a year before 1974.
That the people involved had either worked on Hammer or certainly seen a lot of Hammer and had presumably learned a lot of lessons. Well, it felt like it was made by people who learned a lot of lessons.
Yeah.
And knew what they were doing.
The guy who directed it, who is called Jim O'Connolly, which is really funny because I used to work with a guy called Jim Connolly who was one of the most irascible people I've ever met. However, the guy who directed it was known as a kind of British journeyman director. Like, he just kind of went where the wind took him and he did his thing the way he did his thing.
Right.
But this is what I was going to say at the beginning about the fact that these movies are all tied together by a producer, is that really that's inconsequential, A, because of the styles of the movie, but also inconsequential because, let's cross here, also inconsequential because you imagine that, considering the limiting nature of the British film industry at the time, Ealing's gone, Hammer is on its way out. In fact, it would only be a couple of years after this that they would join up with the Shaw Brothers to make like their last couple of movies. And you're at least about 7 years away from like Lucas and Spielberg showing up and using our studio and using our crews. So you're in a sort of weird nether place where the British industry is winding down, and you know, because after this it becomes all like gangster movies and Mockney movies and stuff like that. You're certainly at the very, very, very tail end of them being able to make gothic horror.
Yeah.
You're really getting to feel the streets.
Yeah, this is the Bronx,
episode.
the sounds of the Bronx, my friend.
So yeah, it's really at the tail end of all that, and it feels like a genuine. I mean, if someone said to me, "What's your, you know, top 10 70s British horror movies?" this would definitely be in it.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would definitely go along.
You know,
with that. I've seen a lot of Hammer as well.
Well,
and
we really liked
some
Satanic
Hammer.
Rites, remember?
Yeah, we
was
did.
great.
That's true. That's
which
true.
was a 70s one, which had Biker Boys as well.
Oh, that's true.
Biker Boys must have been a thing.
Yeah, it maybe like in the Daily Mail. I bet it was a Daily Mail. Like there are too many biker boys. It was like the 70s equivalent of hoodies. Do you know what I mean? They're all wandering around with their crash helmets on.
Yeah.
Who knows what they're looking like underneath those helmets? Who knows what faces they're making at them?
They could be
That's
lobotomized
not
zombies.
it. It's the BM1 is what I want, right?
Yeah, it also won't be coming from that direction.
Oh, fine. Okay, I'm just checking. Oh yeah, good point. Like, because I had to run for the bus yesterday,
right,
to come and see you, and I haven't run for and caught a bus in like 5 years, 6 years.
Well, you haven't run in 5 years.
Well, that's true. But yeah, I would agree that, especially with Hammer, well, sometimes I really, really like them, but they're not. I know they're not that great. It's not that great of a movie. You know what I mean? But this one I did really like, and I did think it was a really good movie. Like, they actually did it right. And I think it's a shame that they couldn't keep churning out movies like this, like getting good actors onto well-lit, well-filmed sound stages with a simple but interesting story, then get a director and he goes, you know what, I've seen this done before, so let's mix it up, let's put flashbacks in it, let's mix the narratives up, and let's like ratchet up the tension. And instead of like having that thing you hear a lot about in the shock marathons that the shock marathons podcast boys do. They talk a lot about how they take like, you know, one of the like most violent scenes in the movie and put it at the beginning to like, you know, give people what they want at the start. And like, so they did that, but they wrote it into like the story. Do you know what I mean? Like, they made that part of the pace instead of it being like a clumsy attempt to do that. It was a guy that goes, I've seen this, we need something right at the beginning, so let's, instead of having the kids arrive at the island and then go, because it could have been kids arrive at the island, nothing happens for a bit, tension gets ratcheted up, they all get murdered, then archaeologists arrive at the island, nothing happens for a bit, and it could have been the same thing happen twice. Right. So the way that he did it and mixed it all up so that there wasn't really a moment of like, it's just gonna come on, it's just gonna move on.
No, the
there was
pacing
never
was
that
great.
feel to it.
And I think also the other thing that's interesting about it, and I watched a movie recently for the B-Movie Bargain Bin called Savage Weekend, which was very, very similar in terms of 4 or 5 suburbanite horny people from New York go upstate and kind of come a cropper because of this like roaming madman upstate. But it was similar in terms of, and it was made in a similar year. It was made around early to mid 70s, and it was like that period where horror was going from the gothic and the traditional to more of what would become the modern style, the Texas Chainsaw Massacres and the Evil Deads and the Reanimators and whatever, like that more kind of. And this had 1 foot definitely moving forward into like the modern slasher era.
Yeah, agreed.
And 1 step still in the smoky old seaman gothic castle type stuff.
Yeah.
So it's also a really interesting movie in terms of the transition of horror cinema. Not to want to sound too pompous about it.
No.
But
I think it's a fair point, because one of the things, especially with British cinema, is at the end of Hammer, there isn't anything, at least in terms of horror movies, which, like, okay, it's not like the greatest British cinema, but Hammer films are good, and they are part of the horror, you know, of the horror movie canon. And then when they were gone, that was kind of it for British horror movies.
Right, and we do make some in the 80s, but they're particularly weird and slapdash and odd.
What's a little bit sad about it is that there's everything in Tower of Evil says to me that these people could keep making. They could have churned out those movies like 3 or 4 of them a year. There's obviously no shortage of acting talent.
I wonder, without getting again too weird, I wonder if Thatcher's Britain without... No, but I honestly mean this. What I mean is what happened in the 80s economically.
Yeah.
Whether that really made it a problem. Because the other thing to be said is that post-89, when the wall comes down, and when international travel gets cheaper and more prevalent, to some extent, which has happened in our lifetime more than it was in the 60s and 70s.
That's true, yeah.
Where there was international travel, it's just not as many people did it. You had a situation where for Hollywood, England was the place to come. We had the best crews, we had the best trained crews, but then we had cheap crews, like in terms of the exchange rate and making movies and blah, 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 blah. Shepperton, Elstree, these studios were used a lot, and are still traditionally used for the Bond films, but they were used a lot by Lucas and Spielberg most famously. But the moment Eastern Europe opens up, and the moment Australia becomes or New Zealand becomes a more viable option in terms of flying there and filming there, England is dropped. Like, England is not used for film production anymore, apart from, like we say, Harry Potter and James Bond. And that's really the only two big franchises that have been able to afford to film there.
Yeah.
You know, and if you don't remember, at the beginning of the 90s, we had that, like, horrible, shitty recession. Where there was like no money in the country and everyone was out of work because post Thatcher's I'm going to put everything on a credit card and privatise everything situation.
Right.
So this is what ends up happening, and it's just it's a very interesting point in British movie making. That's all, and that's why Tower of Evil, if you're at all as into cinema as well as being into horror, is definitely worth tracking down and watching.
I agree. I would definitely recommend it. I thought it was good. I mean, didn't care for Horror Hospital. I mean, I see what you're saying. You know, there are definitely worse movies that have been made. But
well, the other thing I would point out is at least the copies that are out there by Elite Entertainment, who put these out in the late 90s, early 2000s.
Yeah, it's not your Mill Creek kind of.
Yeah, at least you can see it, is what I mean.
Yeah, it is.
I'm
nice
sure there is a shitty Mill Creek version of these movies out there somewhere, because I'm sure by now they're probably in public domain. But when they were released by Elite, if anything, they did crisp, widescreen versions of these movies, so that they do look the beans. They do look. Yeah,
they looked really good. I mean, I thought it looked really, really good.
You weren't squinting through black, muddy day for night shots and not being able to see what the hell's going on.
Yeah, I'm not. Yeah, agreed. It was, especially given the strengths of Tower of Evil, which was how it looked and how it felt, and the transfer, did it justice. And I'm not sure if I would have enjoyed it as much had it been like super grainy. Had it been super grainy or what have you. So I thought it was really good.
So I would definitely suggest people see Tower of Evil. I would only say see Horror Hospital if really there's no other options.
Yeah, agreed. Like it wouldn't be the worst thing you've ever seen.
No. All right, man.
It was really good to see you, man.
Thanks for being on the show. Thanks for coming over.
Thanks for having me up in the Bronx. Right, why is he stopping over there?
I don't know.
See you later, man.
See you later, dude.
We're jazz archaeologists. We only care about roll necks and naked trysts, and the spooky island seems like the perfect spot for this. Oh, it's the perfect spot for this. Oh, we're jazz archaeologists. We've arrived here after hearing about all the deaths and the naked tits. We're underprepared and oversexed, but at least we're not robbing Askwith. No, at least I'm not robbing Askwith. Hey! Oh, we are also here for the gold, and also hopefully to get our end away. And we don't care if it's dark or cold. For us, that's the perfect conditions to get laid. Oh, that's the perfect conditions to get laid. The jazz archaeologist. Woo! jazz archaeologist. It's the 70s, so we're either stoned or permanently pissed. And if one of the ladies of our party dies, well, I guess we can always have one off the wrist. I can always have one off the wrist. Oh, we're jazz archaeologists. From a map we've determined hidden caves is where the gold all is. So let's split up and take a weapon. I don't see any downside to this. I don't see any downside to this. Ha! And who cares if down in the cave there's a big hairy psychotic man? Well, there usually is. Well, we can always give him a shower. And his very own roll neck sweater. His very own roll neck sweater. Getting some nookie and some gold was our only plan. Oh yeah. And does it really get any better? Oh, no, it really. No, it doesn't get any better than that. For a jazz archaeologist. Come on now. Like the show? Well, you can find our complete podcast archive over at amdpodcast.blogspot.com or aftermoviediner.com. You can send us an email at aftermoviediner@gmail.com, tweet us at aftermoviediner, or follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/aftermoviediner. Or why not be a part of the show and leave us a voicemail over at speakpipe.com/aftermoviediner. You can also support the show a number of ways: by spreading the word to family, friends and co-workers, by writing us a review over at iTunes or TalkShoe, by purchasing some excellent diner merchandise over at cafepress.com/aftermoviediner, by donating on our website, by advertising with our website, or maybe you're a regular Amazon user. If so, then before you make a purchase, go to amdpodcast.blogspot.com, aftermoviediner.blogspot.com, or aftermoviediner.com and click through the Amazon banner ads. It costs you nothing extra, but they throw us a few coins for the trouble. Or, like the movies we cover, then buy them over at our personal Amazon store, also on amdpodcast.blogspot.com. Really, thanks everybody for everything you continue to do, and please keep listening.
There are men, and then there are second unit podcast men. The podcast you've just been listening to is part of the Second Unit Podcast Network. Find all of our shows at 2upn.blogspot.com or on Facebook under the Second Unit Podcast Network. Our fantastic list of shows include Drunk on VHS, We Came from the Basement, No Budget Nightmares, The After Movie Diner, Dr. Action and the Kick-Ass Kid, and Bloodbaths and Boomsticks. Take one podcast into the shower. Don't be a blithering idiot, Alan. We can give you the multiple podcast cleansing system all in one place that your hair deserves. Our programming is available across all platforms, from iTunes to Podomatic, TalkShoe to Stitcher, so you have absolutely no excuse. Listen today, and a free naked person of your choice will be shipped from Thailand to your door in a matter of weeks. The Second Unit Podcast Network, bringing you the action and leaving the boring stuff to the other guys. Bloody hell, who does a girl have to blow around here to get a decent beverage?